Hey, everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. Welcome to PHLY Flyers, presented by Mortgage CS. Check out mortgagecs.com/PHLY to get your home buying process started today. Company NMLS ID number 1464766. My name is Bill Matz. I'm your director of fun and games for the afternoon. Joining me, as always, is Philadelphia's #1 hockey beat reporter, Charlie O'Connor. How you doing today, Chuck? One day removed now. You're back in the swing of things. You still jet lagged? How you feeling?
Well, one thing that was good about yesterday was that I had a reason to stay up to continue to fight off the jet lag because there was a Game 7 on, and I wanted to watch that. This was the first hockey game of the second round that I was able to watch, not because I was necessarily opposed to watching games on vacation, but mostly because usually by the time the games would start, I'd be going to sleep.
I can't imagine a huge hockey contingent in Barcelona.
I'm sure that if I really wanted to find a spot, I suspect that there are bars. I know I got a DM from one of our listeners when I was in Rome. I did not use this, but I appreciate whoever it was. Whoever it was, thank you. I got a DM from someone who found that I was in Rome and basically said there is a hockey bar like a few blocks away from the Coliseum if you want to watch the games.
That's awesome.
So like I did not take advantage of it, but I love the fact that I had the option. So thank you very much, sir.
That is actually one of the coolest things I've ever heard.
Yeah.
That's absolutely perfect.
Yeah, it's great.
Maybe we'll get into some of that. Maybe not today. It's still Michkov-Mania. Michkov Monday never ends here. It's no longer Mailbag Monday. That's never ending. Every day is Michkov Monday here.
It's Tuesday, right?
Yeah, no, it's actually Tuesday, but that's the joke. It never ends.
I gotcha.
It continues.
I'm still trying to get a handle on what days are again. So
it's tough in the off season.
Yeah,
because like especially with ours, and you've been gone.
That's the thing.
Now our schedule every day. I don't know. I just show up here. Well, there's a real good chance one Saturday I show up here and I'm like, shit.
We got NBA Jam and NFL Blitz.
Yeah,
so I have something to do here.
It could be a lot worse. Like Love City's out there. Like I could get a haircut. There's plenty to do. I would just be like, oh, what the hell happened? But I want to get into some I guess Michkov related news,
tangential Michkov stuff. I do think this is an interesting way to kick it off because it does speak to
a big portion of yesterday's show.
Not even a big portion of yesterday's show because obviously Michkov was the show, understandably, but it speaks to different approaches that teams are taking to having a highly touted Russian prospect who is the property of a KHL team that you have to wait on. And this is specifically Don Waddell and the Carolina Hurricanes dealing with basically their top prospect. I believe he is their purely top prospect. He's certainly their top defenseman prospect. He might be one of the best defenseman prospects in hockey, Alexander Nikishin.
Why wouldn't they have a top defensive prospect?
Yes, but it was very interesting because during the interview where Rottenberg talks about the Michkov situation, Nikishin's situation is brought up as well. And he has a contract with the team through the end of this upcoming season. Carolina obviously wants him to come over as soon as possible. And Rottenberg, while he was because it showcases that like the Michkov stuff does seem like it's trending towards happening. The fact that Rottenberg, given the opportunity to throw cold water on it, basically said, well, we're negotiating. Like, yeah, might happen. And then they asked him about Nikishin, and he essentially said, we would not part with him now even for $100 million. So the discrepancy between his reaction to that guy and Michkov does seem to give you more hope that the Michkov thing is going to ultimately be resolved in the Flyers' favor.
This interview that I read today, I don't know, like it's Match TV. It's a translation, so it's tough.
Right.
But what I read, it's basically at the exit interviews, Don Waddell was like, yeah, we're trying to bring him over.
Yes.
We're thinking we're going to get him signed. That's pretty much going to happen. Like kind of, I don't know if like threw it in their face is the right word, but was just very outwardly, was very open about the situation. Like, yeah, we're trying to bring him. He has a contract for next year. We want him to come over here anyway.
I would say that Waddell, while not coming off as mean or angry, he definitely came off as adversarial.
That's a perfect way to put it. Like, he has a contract for next year. We're going to try to get that taken care of, bring him over, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know if it was Rottenberg or who, but it says in the Match TV article I read today, a source at the club told Match TV this is a really funny quote. Maybe just be part of it is just the translation. But Waddell's words are surprising, and it is not clear why he says this. What Nikishin,
I believe is how you say, yeah.
has a contract with SKA for the 24-25 season. For us, this is a key defender, and it's not for nothing. Alex is recognized as the best in his role in the KHL. Even if the possibility of selling his rights arises, as in football, we will not part with Nikishin now, even for $100 million. He has one more year on his contract, and this is not at all similar to the situation with Matvei Michkov. And that's really the part where it's like, yeah, man, he's the best defender in the KHL. We're not giving him to you.
Yeah.
Like, you can try, you can even do all the things that we, wink and a nod. Well, the Flyers can't just write him a check. Like, yeah, but I bet you Comcast can do something.
And also, do you really think Tom Dundon is writing anyone a check that he doesn't have to?
$100 million. Tom Dundon's like, I don't know, man. I was going to give you like tickets to a game.
I'm just going to give you $10 and the lit in my pocket.
Yeah, like, how about the rights to the XFL team I no longer own? Like, but it's just pointing out, like, yeah, we're negotiating with Michkov. This is, like we said yesterday, let's say momentum starts to fizzle. It at least opens the door where I can say, I bet you he's here next year, even if it's not this coming season.
I think that's fair.
Like, he's coming early. That really seems to be the case.
Yeah.
And with Nikishin, it's like, no. And it's only 1 year. Like, he's only got the 1 year, and they're like, no, we need this dude. We're not letting go of him for literally anything.
He's really good. And I think, too, the thing for Carolina that makes it number one, Carolina's trying to win a cup. Now, obviously, they lost in the second round this year, but they are a team where their window is wide open. They want one of the best defenseman prospects in the league over as soon as possible, because every year he's not over is another year of Sebastian Aho's prime, of Svechnikov's prime, of everybody on that team, Slavin's prime, that is wasted without him on the team. Number two, and this is also really important, I mean, Carolina is going to have to make some tough decisions.
They have a lot of...
And the big thing is defense. I mean, you look at their defense, like, they're going to have Slavin. He's set, but Tony DeAngelo, whatever, he stinks. Brett Pesce is real good. He's a UFA. Brady Shea is a legitimate top four defenseman. He's a UFA. And Jalen Chatfield is legitimately underrated. He's a UFA. So it behooves them to try their best to get this defensive prospect over here, because I would say even in a best-case scenario, they're probably only bringing back two of those three. Maybe even only one of those three. They're going to have spots open. So they want to get this guy over here. What's interesting to me about this in comparison to the Michkov situation, number one, is the fact that SKA specifically is comparing the two. They're openly saying, this isn't like Michkov, which in an unspoken way, they're kind of saying, Michkov looks like he's probably going. We're not letting this guy go, though. So they're directly making the comparison. But also, it kind of reminds me of that old fable about the sun and the wind, about how, they make a bet of who can get the guy to take the coat off faster, and the wind howls and howls and tries to knock it off, and the guy just holds the coat closer to him, and then the sun just beats down on him and does it gently, and essentially the guy ultimately is like, it's too hot, I'm taking the coat off. So the sun wins, and the moral of the story is essentially that, like, you can get more with honey than whatever. Like, if you do something in a more kind way, you're more likely to get results. Well, it's pretty clear that Brier is taking the route of the sun here, where he is trying to play this as kind as he can with SKA, not ruffle feathers, make sure they have a positive relationship, whereas Waddell is definitely going the wind route, where he's just going to huff and puff and hope that ultimately moves things in a direction where they can get Nikishin faster. I don't know how it's going to play out. We don't know if the Flyers are going to get Michkov early. We don't know if the Carolina Hurricanes are going to get Nikishin. We just don't know. But the discrepancy in tactics is really interesting to me, and it'll kind of be an interesting case study to see how both play out.
I just love... You come back from vacation, Charlie, and today you're talking about fables of the sun and the wind. What was yesterday? Was it Sun Tzu or Napoleon or something you quoted?
Did I? Oh, it did. Yeah, Napoleon. Yeah. Well, Napoleon makes sense because I was in France.
Yes.
Okay. I'm definitely in Napoleon mode right now. On the plane ride to Europe, I watched the probably about the first 2/3 of that Ridley Scott Napoleon movie, which I heard was terrible. And I wanted to watch, number one, because I knew I was going to France. But number two, because I love watching a bad movie.
Oh, it's my favorite kind of movie.
It was real bad. I did not like it. However, I got my money's worth by seeing Joaquin Phoenix as Napoleon scream at someone playing a British ambassador. The line was, "You think you're so great because you have boats?" as Napoleon. I was like, all right, I've seen enough. That's going to be the end point of this movie because it's truly one of the funniest lines. This is one of the giants of world history, and Joaquin Phoenix is playing him like a petulant child who is screaming that, like, oh, England, you only think you're cool because you got boats. Like chef's kiss. 10 out of 10.
Historically
A+,
thought
incredible.
of as the greatest navy ever. you have fucking boats. Like he's singing boats and hose.
And this is spoken by like potentially one of the best military commanders of all time. Like 10 out of 10. Loved it. So maybe that's why Napoleon's in my head. The Fable thing, though, I just thought it was a good comparison.
No, it is. And it speaks to the, like I said, like a big chunk of yesterday's show was talking about Brier's approach here. And I think there is a time to kind of be boastful, to kind of be the Flyers of old. And there is a time to kind of take a step back and go, we're just like, don't be your own obstacle. When momentum is going in your own way, like just let it happen, you know? And that, I got to give Brier a ton of credit for, listen, I haven't loved every single move he's done. Overall, Danny Brier has done it, especially if this thing gets done. And we don't know yet. It really feels like it's happening. There's so much smoke that, like, why wouldn't things just like kind of go this way?
Yes.
But we don't know yet. But if he gets this done, man, his first year on the job, basically, pretty rousing success.
I would say that, in my opinion, it's hard for me to have any serious issues with anything he has done since being named the full-time GM. I think there is probably a reasonable case to be made. I don't even blame him for this. I just think he was put in an impossible situation. There's probably a reasonable case to be made that he could have handled the March conversation with Gauthier better. But the guy was just named interim GM. He didn't really have the full understanding of the nature of that relationship. That to me was just and I think Gauthier probably has ego issues as well, but that was a consequence of the organizational chaos that became necessary because the Flyers put themselves in such a bad spot.
Yeah.
I don't really blame Briere, even if it turns out we find out 5 years down the line that Briere said the wrong sentence in a conversation with Gauthier. I'm not going to pin him on that, but I do think one can reasonably theorize that Briere could have played that better, but that was while he was interim GM.
Yeah.
I think that since he's been named full-time GM, it's hard for me to quibble with really anything he's done, and I am extremely impressed that he's picked it up so quickly. Because my big concern about his hire was that, okay, he really doesn't have that much front office experience, and you're going to just name him the GM, and his president of hockey ops is going to be a guy who, and I love Jonesy, great dude, but let's be honest.
He has no hockey ops experience.
He doesn't have hockey ops experience either. He's been on WIP and NBC for the last 10, 15, and Comcast Sportsnet, then NBC Sports Philly.
He's been doing that for 20 years.
He's been a TV guy for 2 decades, TV and radio guy. It was reasonable to have concerns that there would be a learning curve for Briere. And I think Briere has, at the very least, even if you are not in love with everything he's done, at the very least, Briere has been a middle of the pack quality GM with essentially no front office experience. So if this is his learning curve, you think like, hey, once he's really got the hang of this, is he going to be even better? I guess we'll see. But I'm very impressed that he's picked it up as quickly as he has.
I'll quibble with one point in terms of no front office experience. He learned a shit ton about what not to do.
Fair.
As assistant general manager.
Fair.
But no, I think, the Gauthier stuff, and we've explained, I think, what we believe happened, how we've pieced this together. Now, listen, one of the 2 top prospects in this organization, a guy who ended up being a Hobie Baker finalist, led the nation in scoring, NCAA in scoring, like, that is on his watch.
Sure.
So you have to, even if I'm willing to kind of go, I'm putting this in the big pie chart of whose fault this is, it's mostly Gauthier. Brier deserves some blame.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's literally just his first day on the job, like, you were the guy.
Yeah.
Even with the interim. So you do have to put that on him somewhat. Also, it's a function, like you said. I don't know if he said this directly, but like, Cutter, this place is a shit show.
Our house is on fire at the moment.
I'm not worried about the fucking stained glass windows. I'm worried about like getting my family out of the building. You know, like, can I call you next week? Like, you know, like, can we have this conversation when the fire is out?
Yeah.
And like, maybe that wasn't the right way to handle it. But like, that's kind of what I think happened. And didn't go the Flyers' way. But since then, pretty damn good.
Yeah, I mean, the Fedotov...
You got 2 first-round picks for fucking Ivan Provorov, who had to go.
Yeah, that's really true. And you got multiple second-round picks.
Yeah, and seconds.
Yeah, I mean, you dug up Sean Walker out of nowhere. You get Fedotov over here. There's a lot of things that he did. Because what we've talked about on multiple occasions is the biggest thing that I like about Brier thus far, and this is the biggest distinction he's made between him and Fletcher in my mind, is that Brier actually has creativity. And creativity isn't necessarily something that you have overnight. You know, sometimes maybe you have to develop that by learning on the job, learning the intricacies of negotiating, learning the intricacies of the CBA, things like that. It just seems like Brier has, just like he did as a player, he has a natural creative streak that Chuck Fletcher, who just seemed like a very, like, thinking inside the box kind of general manager, Brier is willing to go outside of it. And I wasn't sure if he was going to have that ability right away. I wasn't sure he was going to have that ability at all, but I wasn't sure he was going to have it right away. The fact that he's shown that he can execute a Provorov trade, that he can get a first-round pick for Walker, even if no one's offering a first straight up for a guy who 7 months ago no one wanted. The fact that he found a way to get Fedotov out of the, Russia after missing a year for being in military service. There's a lot of creative things that Brier's done, and I've been impressed.
And just like, even this Fedotov extension that I was somewhat critical of.
A lot of people were.
And I mean, like, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is.
3.275 for a guy with basically no NHL experience. It's
objectively an overpay.
Like, it's an overpay.
And they know that.
But we're going to talk about the cap situation in a little bit. On Cap Friendly, you just look at what the Flyers are paying for goalie. Under $5 million.
Yeah.
Like, all right, you overpaid one guy, but you also, the dude who's probably going to start 45, 50 games for you is making under 1.5.
It gives
him having that foresight to get that extension done
with Ayerson
allows them to be like, yeah, we're overpaying Ivan Fedotov because he just had to buy out of a KHL contract. But guess what? We're paying under $5 million for our 2 goalies next year.
This was a little bit of a luxury. Like, Fedotov was a bit of a luxury ad.
Yeah.
Because they could have just went out and signed a backup, signed Anthony Stolars in the offseason to be the support for Sam Ayerson. But they really like this guy. And they just want to see, I think, what they have in him. They have the opportunity to see what they have in him. And they're willing to pay an extra $1.5 million a year to just finally figure out what Ivan Fedotov is. Was it an overpay? Yeah, and I think they would admit that. But as you said, because they had the foresight to sign Ayerson when they did, knowing the situation that probably was looming with Carter Hart, believing that Sam Ayerson is a quality NHL goalie, having that scouting foresight to have confidence in him as a player, it gave them the ability where they can spend a little bit extra to figure out what the hell they have in Ivan Fedotov.
I want to get a little bit more Michkov stuff in. I see we have some super chats, but first, I got to tell you about the BetParks Sportsbook app because we're brought to you by the BetParks app. Man, it's money is in these moments, and it's time, man. The conference finals are here, both the NBA and the Stanley Cup playoffs. We have conference finals, the Final Four, if you will. Not to mention baseball every single day. There's something to have some action on whenever you want it, and you can win big with all-day action at the BetParks Sportsbook app. If you win your first $10 bet at BetParks, you can earn $125 in sports bonus bets. I know I've got. It's actually funny. I have futures on all 4 teams remaining. So I win I get a payout regardless.
Right.
But my big win was going to be if Vancouver had won Game 7. that would have been huge for me because I had a Florida Vancouver final.
Okay.
That was just like, now would they beat the Stars? I don't know, getting 12 shots a game, probably not. Probably
didn't seem like a great plan.
Couldn't beat Stu Skinner. I don't know if you could beat Jay Ottinger with like that. But it was like, oh man, I could taste like a couple grand. But I do have futures on all these teams. You can get in on some Stanley Cup playoff action right over at the Bet Park Sportsbook app. Download the app and play along with us. Must be 21 or older. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Let's get to some of these couple of super chats we have here. First one from Patrick. For the Michkov contract termination GoFundMe, $5 for the. Oh, that's outstanding.
Somebody
Love you
made a
guys
joke
in the
about
show.
that yesterday. I think multiple people did on Twitter. But in all seriousness, like, if
Could we?
no, I mean they can't. They can't. But if Hockey News Hub is correct and the buyout in real USD would cost about $400,000, how quickly do you think Flyers fans would raise that? Like,
I
you
mean,
talking like an hour?
I'm like, yeah. There would be people like signing over paychecks. It's Michkov-Mania, man. It is running wild here in Philadelphia. And I did want to get to a little bit more Michkov stuff. Now, I know yesterday you kind of laid down the law. You're not jinxing anything.
Right.
Charlie finally believes in jinxes.
I don't believe in jinxes. I just don't feel like dealing with the bullshit if it turns out that he doesn't come.
Whatever it is. I do want to talk about a few things that aren't directly they need to get Mitch Marner because we need an elite player with an elite
Let's
player.
just real quick do this other super
there's
chat.
another right. From Dylan Phillips, thoughts on Cole Yzerman with Matvei Michkov.
So, okay, we're going to get into a lot more draft stuff over the next couple of weeks.
Starts tomorrow?
Yeah, we can do draft stuff tomorrow, I think.
We'll see if there's another Michkov ties his shoes.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? We're going to do that.
It's very possible.
Yeah.
Dylan, I am a fan of Cole Yzerman. I like him as a prospect. I don't really want him to be the Flyers pick. So, number one, I don't think he fits that well with Michkov. Michkov is a goal scorer. Yzerman is a pure goal scorer. If they draft Yzerman, I really wouldn't. I'm relatively fine with them taking Yzerman. If they draft Yzerman, I don't want Yzerman on a line with Michkov because it's stupid. Why put a pure sniper on a line with a pure goal scorer? I want playmakers on a line with Matvei Michkov.
What if we get one playmaking center and they both score 50 goals?
I mean, well, then you just have a superstar.
I'm just saying. You get the playmaking center. He can set up both Yzerman and Michkov.
Okay.
Legion of Doom.
Okay.
Unstoppable.
Also, while I like Cole Yzerman, I think right now I have Yzerman ranked like 9th on my draft board. There are guys who I think will be available for the Flyers that I like better than Cole Yzerman. So Yzerman right now to me is looking like a pick that I wouldn't have an issue with. I like him. I like his upside. I think he is being nitpicked a little bit too much right now by scouts, probably because of overexposure. But like, if Berkeley Catton's available and Cole Yzerman's available, I am not fucking picking a Cole Yzerman. I'm running to pick Berkeley Catton.
Berkeley Catton came up at number 8 today, I believe, on the community draft board for Broad Street Hockey.
Like, there are guys who it does appear have a decent chance. Like, I would pick Carter Yakimchuk over Cole Yzerman. Like, there are multiple guys like Zeev Buium I would 100% pick over Cole Yzerman. There are guys who I think have a decent chance of being available that I like a lot more than Cole Yzerman. And that's not because I think poorly of Cole Yzerman. It's because I think much higher of those guys. And it seems like the way this board is shaking up, at least based on the early mock drafts, we'll see how this plays out over the next month. A lot of the guys who I like might have a chance to be there, and I like guys more than Cole Yzerman. So there's your answer, Dylan. We'll get into more draft stuff later.
No, it looks like... Listen, if they get Cole Yzerman, cool. Yeah. And I do the overexposure thing. I do think is a big part of what's kind of happening to his draft stock right now. It's like the presumed number 1 quarterback for 2 years. And it's like, well, is he that good?
Exactly.
It's like, yeah, because we've broken down every single throw for 2 years that we're just starting to see holes, even if they're not there.
I mean, remember Peyton Manning, Ryan Leaf?
Yeah.
And like, yes, Peyton Manning ultimately was the first overall pick, but Leaf was the exciting guy. It's real close. It's real close.
One is one of the 4 best ever, and the other is a fucking, like, he went to jail.
Yeah.
You know, like.
Is he on like reality TV shows now?
I think so,
like C-list reality TV shows?
I just saw him in a headline, actually.
Oh, boy.
But anyway, I want to talk about something we've brought up a little bit But now, since it appears like it may be imminent is very funny to say. The difference between Michkov coming over, this will be age 19, turning 20 in December season, as opposed to like his 21-22 age season, which is what he would be if he served his full contract in the KHL.
Right.
We have talked about the potential competitive advantage that the Flyers would have of adding a, early 20s, but sort of entering prime Michkov on an ELC.
Right.
Potentially having your best player entering his prime, making, $975K or whatever. It allows
you would have had a lot of bonuses too, but
there's going to be bonuses and stuff. You can kick that can.
Fair.
I'm just like, for the cap hit that day.
True. When
July 1st comes and you go, all right, what are we looking at in free agency? Who are we looking to trade for?
Right.
You have a guy making about like under $1 million essentially. It allows you to be a little bit, I wouldn't say like crazy in free agency, but it's just like, we can add a couple of upper mid-level guys that maybe we couldn't afford if we had already signed him to his his bridge, or more likely his 8-year $10 million deal or whatever. Now coming over, he'll be a teenager when the season starts. It's a little bit different of a situation for the Flyers if it is to happen this upcoming season.
I think Matvei Michkov, when he comes over, like if he were to come over next season, I think he will be a productive NHL player from the jump. But he is not a finished product yet.
No.
He is in need of more development to hopefully ultimately become what he is going to become, which we all hope is going to be a franchise-changing star. Like, Connor Bedard was good this year. He's going to win Rookie of the Year, real good rookie season. But
Chicago's horrible.
Not even that. He's not a great player yet. He scored a lot of points. If you look at his underlying metrics, they were absolute trash. Now, a lot of that was because teams were throwing their best players against him, but presumably, at some point, you are going to want Connor Bedard, if he is your best player, to be able to win those matchups against other teams' best players. He's not there yet. And this is the one guy who I think was a better prospect than Matvei Michkov in last year's draft.
Like, hands down.
Yeah.
He should have gone. We can say, okay, maybe Michkov over Fantilli, maybe Michkov over Carlson's kind of a group there of three guys. But no matter what, if Matvei Michkov's name was Jeff Carter and he played in the CHL,
Bedard still gets taken one.
Bedard still goes number one.
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%. Yeah. Bedard skating, everything. Yeah. The fact that he's a center. There were so many things that were going to put Bedard over Michkov, even if there were no geopolitical concerns in the Russia factor or anything. But I think that I don't want to get into this yet because there will be time if they get him. But I do think that if Matvei Michkov plays for the Flyers next season, there will be a time for us to talk about how expectations should be tempered a bit. Not that he's not going to be good, but I would not. I would ask everyone not to expect him to be a superstar, game-changing, every night dominant player off the jump. He'll be adapting to an entirely new country, an entirely new style of play. He'll be adapting to new teammates. He'll be adapting to John freaking Tortorella, most likely. So it will be a big deal if the Flyers get Michkov. It will immediately make the Flyers a significantly more interesting team to watch and a much more fun team to cover. But just getting him next year is not turning the Flyers into a legitimate contender. It's just not.
No, and like people, and I think there's like excited for his arrival and what he's going to become, and people all of a sudden see like, oh, we're putting these expectations on this guy. Like, my expectations for him ultimately are to become a perennial all-star.
Yeah, like 100-point guy. That would be, like, well, at least point per game.
A point per game to 100-point guy, sure. Right away, though, it's just the excitement of we finally have one of these dudes.
Yes.
Like, we have a guy who might become a great player in this league, and it's been a while since we've had the possibility of that. Like, I think a lot of this fan base does underrate Claude Giroux. I believe some of this fan base might overrate Claude Giroux a little. But, like, he was a great player.
Absolutely.
But it was like 2010, the last time it was like, oh, he might be awesome.
Yeah.
You know, like we haven't had
2017, 2018. I think he was one of the in that season. I think he was one of the 10 best players in the NHL.
Oh, I think he should have been a Hart finalist the year he
maybe
broke
5
100
best
points.
players. Yeah.
I just mean like we came to expect it for like he became great and we almost took it for granted.
Well,
like
a lot of people took it for granted.
We haven't had the like hopefulness of having a guy like that since he was young.
True.
That was he's an old guy in the league now. And we haven't had that since he was a young guy.
Yeah.
And now we finally, and I think that's so much of people's expectations, but no, do I think the Flyers are going to, like, they might be visually better than last year because they have a dude who on any given night could be a game breaker.
Right.
But on every night, probably not, because nobody at 19-20 is unless you're Sidney Crosby.
And he could be.
It's possible.
But I'm just saying.
It's on the table.
Don't expect it.
No, it's.
Expect him to be a good player from the jump. Don't expect him to be like, and this is the big thing I will caution people. Please God, if he is not super duper amazing in his first year, do not write him off, please.
Yeah, right now, what I'm expecting out of Michkov, just when he gets here, we're going to say for the sake of this conversation, is the 24-25 season. Owen Tippett level impact. On any given night, he could be the best player on the ice. But to expect it for 2 consecutive weeks, you're going to be let down. Like, that's what I'm expecting out of Michkov if he comes over as a teenager. I think that's
reasonable.
The fairest way to look at it.
I think that's reasonable. Yeah.
All right, let's get to that super chat I see from Linden49. Word on the street is the Flyers love Luchenko.
Jet Luchenko. He's a small-ish center who is very fast. I did not hear this. It seems like M. Bodine is claiming that Craig Button has linked the Flyers to Jet Luchenko. Look, he's an intriguing prospect. I don't think he's one of the 14 best prospects in the draft, so I would not love him at 12.
Florida?
I don't think he would slip to Florida.
Okay.
They're
in the Final Four now.
He seems like he's a guy who is rising. His stock is going up. I like him as a prospect. I probably have him somewhere in like my 18 to 24-ish range. He's cool. He's a quick center who seems to be improving. But like, again, if Berkeley Catton is staring at them at 12, it would be insane to pick Jet Luchenko, who is just a worse version of Berkeley Catton. Berkeley Catton is just as fast as Jet Luchenko and a ton more skill. So, look, again, if Luchenko is a guy who maybe they try to trade up for in the mid part of the first round, I'm all for that. Don't love him at 12, though, at least based on my initial viewings.
You know what I do love, though? Olipop.
Do love Olipop.
Listen, Olipop is the world's first functional soda with a classic soda taste and the benefits of plant-based fiber, prebiotics, and other botanical ingredients to support gut health. Olipop is a new kind of soda with only 2 to 5 grams of sugar in every can, plus 9 grams of fiber in every can. 2 out of 3 Americans say they suffer from digestive issues, and 95% of Americans don't get the daily recommended amount of fiber. Olipop is tackling both of these issues with a drink that tastes just like soda. Prebiotic fiber is the food source for the beneficial probiotic bacteria in your gut, and Olipop has 9 grams of prebiotic fiber in every can that can help support your digestive health. When you've got a gut like mine, you got to keep it healthy. Olipop is available online and available in almost 30,000 retailers nationwide, including the most recent launch at all Wawas. That's right. Olipop's debut in Wawa couldn't be more of a match made in heaven. A delicious, healthy drink meets a convenience store where we get everything else for our day already. Now you can get your sandwich, your snack at Wawa, get a tasty soda that won't leave you feeling guilty about drinking a can of poison, because Olipop isn't that. It's the opposite of most sodas, and the 2 flavors available at Wawa, classic root beer and strawberry vanilla, I endorse both. So use the promo code PHLY20 for 20% off your next order of Olipop online at drinkolipop.com. The discount only applies to one-time orders, not to subscriptions. It's also sold online at Amazon and available in almost 30,000 retailers nationwide, including Wawa, Target, Sprouts, Wegmans, ShopRite, and GoPuff. You know, as much as I love Wawa, I would never disparage them. Got a sticker right on my laptop.
Mm-hmm.
Go to drinkalleypop.com. Get your 20% off. That's drinkalleypop.com. Promo code PHLY20. All right. That kind of gets us to...
Oh, and I'm seeing where this is coming from. So this is right when I went on vacation. On May 7th, Craig Button posted his post-lottery mock draft. He had the Flyers taking Luchenko. Look, I guess it's possible, but I don't particularly love this mock draft. Like the idea that Berkeley Catton is not taken in the top 16 pick seems wild to me. That would be insane. Yeah. Look, I just don't see it. Maybe they like Jet Luchenko. Maybe Button has inside information, or maybe this was just him trying to make a point that Jet Luchenko's stock is going up, which I have heard it is. But this mock draft seems kind of crazy to me. Just saying.
All right. I said I wanted to get into some salary cap stuff today, and it kind of came from the idea of, all right, well, if Michkov's coming over, how do we maximize Michkov? And to me, like, if he is coming over, I'm not saying this needs to accelerate the rebuild necessarily. Like, all right, now we got to be all in.
And I don't think it will.
Like,
I think the people who think that if Michkov comes over, that means they're immediately going to start trading first-round picks and start adding vets. Like, that's not going to happen.
No. I'm not advocating for, like, okay, we got to move all these young assets so we can get players around Michkov and let's try to win it when he's 21 years old. Like, that's not what I think is going to happen. But I do think for Michkov's development, you need to add a high-end player for him to play alongside, so that, like, it's a conversation I used to have with Marcus Hayes on WIP about the Sixers process.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it was very interesting.
Yeah, because he hated the process.
He did.
Right? Yeah.
But one of the things he hated most about is, like, okay, you have these young players you're trying to develop. Now, some of them might be Joel Embiid, future stars. Some of them might be busts, like Jahlil Okafor. But how do you find out about a guy like that, someone who needs to be fed the ball, if the guy feeding them the ball, let's say the point guard, is someone they picked out of the stands that night? Like, if the number one center is me or you, Charlie, I don't know how that helps Matvei Michkov. And, like, this is not to disparage Sean Couture. Coots might come back and be awesome. Frost might take another step. Who knows? Any of this is possible. But I just think to get the most out of Michkov and kind of shepherd him along, whether it's a wing, a center, whatever it is, he needs a dude that's as good as him.
I don't know if I totally agree. I do agree that it would be ideal, and look, if they can work out some sort of deal this summer and maybe be more aggressive than they would otherwise to trade for, like, a Trevor Zegras and be like, all right, Trevor, you are now Matvei Michkov center. Have fun, buddy. Which, I mean,
Can
I'm
you
sure
imagine the number of Michigan? Like, we would have to dress Delorier every night and probably play him on their line.
Oh,
like, that's
God.
what it would be. It would be one of those, like, old school. We have 2 stars and a fighter.
Yeah.
Good luck.
But so I agree that would be ideal. Ovechkin had Backstrom. Like Crosby and Malkin were together. Obviously, they weren't always on the same line, but they did stack them at times. And they also had Letang getting the puck. So they had guys who were high end, to support Crosby, to support Ovechkin. I'm not saying that Matvei Michkov is going to be as good as those two guys, but we're just talking conceptually.
Yeah.
That said, I don't think the Flyers are bereft of talent. Like, is it ideal if Michkov's first year is spent largely being centered by one of Morgan Frost or Sean Couturier? No, it's not ideal, but I don't think they're scrubs.
No,
I think they can get by. I don't think, like, the process was an extreme way to team build. There were actual scrubs on the court every single night.
In the league.
Yes. Yeah. Whereas the Flyers are a team. They play a sport called hockey. Throwback for the old BSH listeners.
Oh, I wish we could still play that shit. And I hated it so much, but I wish we could still play.
But the Flyers are a team that does have quality players that they can put with Michkov right away. I don't think you have to rush into a trade for another high-end guy just because you get Michkov. I do think it needs to be the goal, because I agree with you over the long term. Yeah, like, I don't want this to be a Kirill Kaprizov situation where his center is Joel Eriksson-Ek. Yeah. Perfectly solid player. He ain't a 1C at the
Here's
NHL
Ryan
level.
Hartman.
Yeah, like, he's not even really a center.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell? The Flyers didn't even want him. Like, what the hell?
Couldn't afford him.
It's insane. So
Yeah,
I don't want that. But I don't think that you have to rush a big trade just because Michkov is here, even if that should be the long-term goal. By long-term, I don't mean 5 years down the road. I mean like 1 to 3 years down the road, get that center to play with.
They
Michkov.
need to be in on dudes and eventually land one.
Exactly.
Like that's.
But to me,
It
it's
doesn't
not,
have to happen today.
I don't think it's a like, well, we got to do it this summer because if Michkov plays with Morgan Frost, he's not going to develop. I think Morgan Frost is good enough for him to not have his development hampered. Like Connor Bedard, look at this year. Connor Bedard's 2 primary line mates, Nick Foligno and Philip Kurashev.
Yeah.
Like Foligno, perfectly nice player. Couturier is better than him still. Kurashev is a guy. He's fine.
But Foligno will fight, so.
Well, there's that. Yeah. Couturier fought once this year, didn't he?
I think he did drop the gloves once.
Yeah. So he can fight
a
scotch.
Listen, he is Canadian.
But my point is that I think if Michkov, and this is something that the Sixers ran into, honestly, yes, there were guys like Okafor and I guess like Fultz, but he entered in a different situation that were straight up busts. But when you got an Embiid, it didn't freaking matter who was around him. You could tell immediately he was a star. And the hope is that Michkov is going to be one of those guys where, you can watch Connor Bedard play and say, man, he'd be so much better if he had some actual friggin' high-quality wingers. But you can watch him and say, he's already real friggin' good, and it's not like he's a bust. I don't think there is a risk of Michkov busting because you don't have good enough players around him. If he needs really good players around him to be really good, then he's not the player we wanted to be anyway.
Oh, yeah. Like, I just want to maximize.
I do too.
Like, him like the way, you're getting the most out of Ryan Hartman, playing him with Kirill Kaprizov.
Absolutely.
That's great.
You're not getting the most out of Kirill Kaprizov.
It kind of caps what he can do. Like, if you put them together, it's going back to the Claude Giroux conversation that we've had so many times over the years. Yeah, he was awesome and made everyone around him better. Those players weren't good enough, though.
It would have been really cool to see prime Claude Giroux with a winger that could score goals that wasn't Michael Raffle.
Yeah, like Scott Hartnell
would have been cool.
Scored 37. What if you had a guy whose base was 37?
Yeah,
not career high.
Yeah,
but there's plenty of time to get into that.
Sure.
The point of bringing all this up was, all right, I think the Flyers need to add somebody if they're getting Michkov this summer.
I think they need to. I don't think they need to add somebody, but I think they need to be looking to add somebody.
Sure.
If not multiple bodies.
If they're going to do that, the next question to me becomes how. So I open up the old Cap Friendly, and Cap Friendly recently did something that I've been waiting for them to do for a few weeks. Rolled over all the information to next season. So it's the 2024-25 salary cap. It's all that. Like the guys who are UFAs are listed as UFAs. It's not like next year. We're there, It's May. There's 4 teams left in the playoffs. So right now, this is hilarious to me. Right now, the Flyers have a projected $500,000 in cap space for next season. Before utilizing LTIR, the Flyers have the least cap space in the league.
It is funny.
Now, it's very funny. Now, this includes Ryan Ellis at $6.25 and Ryan Johansson at $4. So you have $10 million that essentially, in some way or another, is in all likelihood not going to count against your cap.
Yeah, if both of them,
if you are to need,
if you need to move them to LTIR, you certainly can. Now we still don't know what's going to happen with Johansson. It's possible if he gets healthy because he decides he wants to play again, but just doesn't want to play for the Flyers. If he passes a physical, I assume they will buy him out, which means they won't get the full relief. But I don't think there's a scenario where if they need the cap space, they will have a full $4 million cap hit for Ryan Johansson on their books. And Ryan Ellis is never going to play again, so you can put him on LTIR if you really need to. Look, it's a weird situation because you're like, how do they get put in cap hell again? The way they've been put in cap hell though is because they are a rebuilding team and they are weaponizing their cap space.
Yes.
Like Cal Peterson is taking up nearly $4 million, even if he's buried. Everyone knows Cal Peterson is not an NHL caliber goalie. Cal Peterson was a way for them to get the return they got for Provorov. And they were fine with it because their thought process was, we're still in a rebuild. We don't need the cap space right now. We can eat it. Now, I think Anthony DeMarco of the Fourth Period reported today that Flyers are leaning towards not buying out Cal Peterson. That was always my assumption.
That seemed like the right
My
move.
assumption was always that just because they're going to have to make a buyout decision on Cam Atkinson.
Yep.
They're going to have to they're going to have to navigate this Ryan Johansson thing. Cal Peterson struck me as like, yeah, he's the guy. There's one more year left in his deal. We park him in the minors. He can come up if guys get hurt and eat a couple games in the NHL and be bad because he's Cal Peterson. But whatever, we're not going to have to deal with a couple years of a buyout when we already have one more year of Kevin Hayes at 3 points, whatever million it is.
Kevin Hayes, his retention is for 24-25 and 25-26 at $3.6 million. Now, I did look this up. I was trying to see if anyone's talking about a buyout in St. Louis, because St. Louis can buy him out, and the cap ramifications are the same for the Flyers.
Right.
What did I say? Yeah, Kevin Hayes.
Right.
If St. Louis buys out Kevin Hayes, it would result in the Flyers paying about $2.4 million for each of the next 2 years, and then $667K for the following two. So like you do have cap savings for 2 years and then 2 years of like less than league minimum. It wouldn't be the worst thing if they did that. Now I couldn't find anything about it. It looks like they're going to try to ride it out too, the way we're going to do with Cal Peterson, but it is 2 years for them. So we'll see how that goes. You also have the Tony D buyout, not a ton, 1.67, but that goes through this upcoming season.
It's something.
And this cap number that they have right now with $500K in projected space, and again, that's before utilizing LTIR, whatever happens with Johansson, etc. Cap Friendly has Bobby Brink, who's an arbitration eligible RFA, Adam Jennings, same thing, and Ronnie Attard, who signed at $850K on the non-roster because they got sent down to the Phantoms for the playoffs. So you do have like three guys, at least one of whom is going to be on the roster, definitely, and then two guys who might be, not even factoring into this thing. Do the Flyers need to do some house cleaning just to get things under some semblance of control here, or do you think it kind of works itself out with LTIR, Johansson, and Atkinson?
So I don't think they need to. I'll probably do an article over the next week or so looking into the Flyers cap situation. It's probably a good thing to do to sort of set up the rest of the offseason. They could, because the thing is that the guys who need new contracts aren't going to get.
They're cheap.
They're not going to get that much. Like Evolving Hockey helpfully has done their contract projections, which are usually really good. But looking at that right now, they have Zamula projected for a 2-year contract at $1.7 million per year, so that's the cap hit. Brink, a 2-year contract worth $1.6 million per year. So neither of those contracts are gonna break the bank. They'll be able to fit them pretty easily.
$3 million.
Eric Johnson, if they do bring him back, has been rumored to be the 7. He'll probably get about $1 million, maybe less than that. Who knows? Like he will essentially be a league minimum contract. Maybe a couple, 100,000 more, but I can't imagine that much more. So they can, if they simply, make a decision on Atkinson, LTIR Johansson, LTIR Ellis, they have the flexibility to make this work. However, if they want to make changes to the roster, if they want to go out and sign another like Garnet Hathaway, Ryan Poehling type dude in free agency or whatever, I mean, Jonesy spoke on Anthony Gargano's show a couple months ago or a month and a half ago about the idea of like, we would love to have a power play quarterback. That would be great if we can find a way. So if they want to do some maneuvering, they're going to have to move some money out. But I do think there are ways for them to do it. Obviously, we've heard rumors about Joel Farabee's availability in the trade market. We have the fact that they could save a not insignificant amount of money if they bought out Cam Atkinson. You would save $3.156 million for next season. If you buy out Cam Atkinson, that would open up some space. And then, as you mentioned, they could tap an LTIR. I think ideally they would not love to do that because that messes up with the bonus overage, but they can. So they do have the flexibility. I just think of if they were going to say go out and trade for like Jacob Chikrin or Trevor Zegras, then they would have to be moving some money out and they might have to do some maneuvering the rest of the roster to make everything work. But I don't think they are in a terribly precarious cap situation. They just are using up their cap space to further the rebuild. And I think that's the right thing to do.
It absolutely is. And we're talking about smart financial decisions right now. Flyers have to make some really smart financial decisions. One of the smartest financial decisions you could make, Joining a credit union like TrueMark Financial, because when you join a credit union like TrueMark Financial, you become part owner, which means profits come back to you instead of going to shareholders. You can also get better rates, lower fees, a better return on savings, and more flexible options with all the same digital tools and tech that make our lives easier and we've come to expect from our banking partners. TrueMark has local roots. Maybe the most important thing about them, headquartered in Fort Washington with 24 branches in the Philly area. That means they serve our community and our people right here at home. And becoming a member of a credit union has so many benefits over being a customer at a bank. It's almost seeming like a no-brainer. So head to TrueMark.com/PHLY to learn more or find a branch near you. That's TRUMARK.com/PHLY. Federally insured by the NCUA. I've told you this before, but a couple of weeks ago, we had an opportunity to sit down with the people at TrueMark, and it really was eye-opening to see the difference between being a customer at a big bank and how they explained being a partner at TrueMark. And it was it just seemed cool. Yeah. Honestly, yeah. It seemed like a cool community to be a part of. And they are very interested in your personal financial. They're asking me, because I joke around, about how I'm financially illiterate. And they're like,
thank God for Ava.
Oh, Jesus. But they're, I joke around about being financially illiterate. And they're like, so if you need information, we can help you. And I bet you I'm not the only idiot out there that could benefit from you go to a teller at a bank. They don't know anything. They work at the bank because that's their job. Yeah. These people are dedicated to serving you. So head to TrueMark.com/PHLY. I don't think you'll be disappointed. So that's the salary cap situation. I just thought it was interesting to get into because I open it. I see they rolled it over today, cap friendly. I'm like, oh, let's check it out. And where are the Flyers? Oh shit, they're at the top.
They're real high.
They're at the top. They're spending, but it makes sense. They have They have over $10 million dedicated to dudes who ain't playing on the team. One way or another, Ryan Ellis and Ryan Johansson are not Philadelphia Flyers.
They've made that very clear. I think the main thing that this should serve as a reminder to fans about looking at the cap situation, it isn't that they're in cap hell. It isn't that this isn't all part of the plan, because it is. And the cap situation does open up dramatically in the next couple of years, as long as they don't do anything crazy, which I guess it's the Flyers. You can never totally rule that out. But the big thing that it should give you, for example, we have Evil Gritty. Oh, Evil Gritty's here. What do you know? But about an hour ago, the Tampa Bay Lightning traded for Ryan McDonagh again.
Can I just see your laptop real quick?
Make sure. Oh, my God.
See if you're... I know it's not you. That's going to get edited now, too.
But anyway,
go ahead.
They traded a second-round pick for Ryan McDonagh. Those aren't really the moves the Flyers can make. And I'm not just saying that because they don't want to give up draft picks. They don't. That's part of it. But the Flyers are no longer in a position where they can just, take a contract just because they want to. That's not the cap situation the Flyers are in, because they have to re-sign their guys, because they have to make decisions on players like Johansson. Things are complicated with situations like Atkinson. They aren't in... Their flexibility for the next year is much more limited than it was going into last offseason, when they had the ability to take on Sean Walker and Cal Peterson just to get the return they wanted for Ivan Provorov. They don't have that flexibility anymore. Now they're going to have to be even more creative if they want to get themselves involved in those kind of deals. Not saying they can't do it. It's just going to be more difficult because, as you said, they have a lot of money on their books right now.
And it's you see the Noah Hannafin trade and how the Flyers were the middleman in the Noah Hannafin trade. And maybe they'll be able to do something like that once they get this cleaned up. But it might not be, oh, you know who we should call? The Flyers don't want to get it on this. Right. We'll throw them a fourth or fifth or whatever the hell they got for that.
Right.
It's maybe we're going to call someone else first.
Yeah. And also, all this could change if, a player or two gets moved. We have talked, and I don't think it's likely because of the injury, but we've talked about the idea of Rasmus Ristolainen getting moved. I don't think that's off the table. And if he's moved, that's $5.1 million. It's just poof. I guess unless you bring somebody back in the deal. But that could open it back up for, okay, well, we want to make a trade and we want to maximize our assets, so maybe we'll take back a bad contract because we no longer have the $5 million for Rasmus Ristolainen. So there are a lot of ways this offseason could go. I'm not saying that they won't ultimately add a bigger contract in some sort of trade, but the situation they're in now, They have a lot of money on their books, and it would be difficult unless other shoes drop for them to take on a big contract just to play the role of a rebuilding team that doesn't care about cap space that much.
It's all I could think when I saw the cap number today was, I see this and I go, how the hell is this possible? And I just think about Ron Hextall. Like, do you think he's ever in his just bored moments at home, he opens up Cap Friendly and like, look what they did. Look what all my work.
I'm imagining him as Marlon Brando in The Godfather.
Exactly
look how they massacred my boy.
That's exactly what I was thinking when I wrote it. Like, what did they do? My work. This thing. The only positive thing I did was get them out of their cap hell.
Yeah.
And again, like, this is different than the cap hell they were in when Ron Hextall took over the job, because like there's a way out other than just waiting.
Other than waiting and making some trades where you can, because Paul Holmgren left him a situation where they were a maxed out cap team with clear roster flaws and no assets they could use to fill those roster flaws.
So we stink. We have no money and we have no assets. All right, good luck, G. He's a bad captain, let me tell
Terrible
you.
captain.
Before we wrap up today, I want to get to to a little bit of the playoffs, because like I said, we're in the conference finals now.
Down to 4.
We got the Game 7 last night. Charlie finally gets to take his victory lap on the Vancouver Canucks. Of course, no Thatcher Demko, no Brock Besser. But I was saying yesterday before the show, like, they're a game away from the Western Conference. Like, I know what the Oilers are. Do I think they're like the best team out? But I have an idea of how good they are.
They could win it all.
The Panthers, the Rangers, I kind of know what these teams are. The Canucks, it was Game 7 of the second round of the playoffs. I was like, are they good? Obviously, they have a ton of good players.
They do have a lot of really good players. Yeah,
but
they also have a lot of really bad ones.
How do they now, seeing what the problem is, okay, we have this talent and we're able to maybe we're a PDO team. Maybe we can have a high save percentage and a high shooting percentage because of our high end talent, because of our goalie talent. Maybe that's possible. But once you get to where they are in the playoffs, where it's you're going to run into McKinnon, McDavid, you're going to run into teams that have as much high-end talent as you, how do you transition to, we need to have the puck more? Is that just a style? We can't win games getting 22 shots tops.
Yeah,
how do you become better once you're kind of in this spot that they are, where how do they add somebody? They have all these dudes.
They have a lot of dudes who are going to be free agents.
And Hronek might, they have dudes they might lose.
Yeah. They're in a tough spot. They are. And I know I took a lot of flack from Vancouver Canucks fans this season because I said that they weren't an elite team. At the time, I was basically I think they're going to regress dramatically, which they didn't. So props to you guys. You finished very well. But I never put them on the level of the truly elite teams with a real shot at winning the cup. And it became funny because the longer they kept it up, the more I thought to myself, I might have just missed it. Maybe Rick Tocchet really is just an incredible coach and they've come together and their role players are better than I thought, because I very much have respect for the Elias Petterssons, the Brock Bessers, the JT Millers, Quinn Hughes. They're all really good. That's undeniable. But I just thought the rest of their roster kind of looked like shit. Just a bunch of dudes behind all these really good players. There's a reason why I compared them, and Vancouver fans lost their friggin' minds, but I still hold to this comparison. I compared them to the 2017-2018 Flyers, where you have 4 or 5 guys at the top of the lineup who are freaking awesome, a couple of which are having career years that they're never going to beat again, which I think is the same thing Vancouver was dealing with this year. And then below them, a bunch of dudes. And eventually, I thought that the fact that the rest of the roster was just a bunch of dudes was going to be exploited. But I thought to myself, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe these guys are better than I thought. And then every time I would watch them play, I would be like, no, I'm right. I watch this team and they don't look good. They rarely actually looked good. And in this playoff run, they rarely actually look good. There was one game out of 13 where they had more than 30 shots on goal. Like, their entire strategy was, we're going to mostly suck for like 2/3 of the game, and then we're going to have 6-minute bursts where we look awesome.
And we saw it so much against Nashville.
Yeah, like they were, that Nashville series, they were the worst team for probably 70% of the series. It was just the 30% of the series they looked good. They looked freaking amazing.
I wanted to bring it up because I know you had all that Vancouver stuff, and now you get to at least be somewhat right about them.
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm right. It's just that I still hold that they're not that great of a team. And in watching them during this playoff run, my mind was not changed.
Like, say
that
they
they're
get
not that great of a team.
I think if they get all the way there, they win last night, they somehow beat the Stars, which seems like it would have been impossible for them. But like, they run into Florida, they look like Florida looked in the final last year. It's like, yeah, they're outmatched, man.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what you're going to do here. But the one thing I wanted to bring up about the playoffs, so we have Oilers, Stars in the West, Panthers, Rangers in the East. It's been a little topic the last couple days on some of the national shows. Obviously, Chris Knobloch of Dave Hackstall fame is one of the 4 coaches remaining. The other 3, retreads.
Hey-o.
Paul Maurice, he's been to 2 cups, lost both. Peter DeBoer, same thing. And Lavi's been to 3 cups, 1 in 06, lost, obviously, we know, with the Flyers in 2010. Nashville in 2017. Do you think sometimes, this is something I think Elliot Friedman said yesterday, like, yeah, there are coaches who maybe get too many shots around the league, and then guys just do get recycled a bit, but a lot of times we go a little overboard with the retread talk. Like, I look at a guy like Peter Laviolette, and I just think he's a really good coach, but he only lasts a certain amount of time. So you get he could have 32 jobs. He could coach could coach in all 32 places and have success in all 32 places for 2 to 3 years. Like, that's a real possibility for him. He's not a retread. He's just a guy who he's really good for a short period of time. Like, do we go a little overboard with that conversation? Like, coaches get recycled too much when 3 of the 4 are guys who've been in 3, 4, 5 different places?
Probably, yeah, because everybody wants the shiny new toy. And I think Flyers fans, particularly those that tend to spend time online and listen to our show, tend to be more of the, like, I want something new because what we've been doing for so long isn't working type of fan. And those fans are going to be very anti-retread coaches who have done it before. But I don't think that having been a coach before at the NHL level is inherently a bad thing. I also think, though, that, like, this is kind of damning with faint praise about coaches. I don't think there are that many coaches that truly do move the needle. I think that there are a few. I actually think John Tortorella is one of them. Now, there are negatives to his approach, but I do think he gets more out of his teams than the talent would have you believe should be gotten out of those teams. But, like, I don't look at Paul Maurice and think he's an amazing coach. I think he's fine. He's coaching an amazing team. Like, is Chris Knobloch truly a great coach, or is he just, like, finally getting some goaltending and has 2 of the best players in the world? Like, Lavi's a legitimately really good coach. He is. And I think that I think the Rangers are getting a legitimate Lavi boost. But I do agree that Lavi's flaw is that boost only lasts about 3 to 4 years before there's only so many times you can hear the run through a wall speech before you and you still run through a wall. At some point you start to roll your eyes and you're like, all right, Pete, we get it. You're fired up. Cool. But for those first 2-3 years, he freaking rules. You love him. And the Rangers are getting year 1 of Lavi. They're getting the big boost. Pete DeBoer is a good coach. But, like, look at that Dallas team. It's freaking stacked.
Yeah.
Like, they got, like, Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn on their 3rd line. It's loaded.
It's decent.
It's pretty good.
Pretty decent.
So I do think that we probably shit on coaches too much and blame them too often.
It's the easiest, yeah.
But by the same token, the flip side of it is that while we probably blame them too much, we also probably give them too much credit when a team is good, when in reality, it's mostly just that the team is good.
Team is
and
good.
The coach isn't actively fucking it up.
How many times have we said, you show me a Vezina candidate, I'll show you a great coach? Like, look at these two, the Jack Adams and the Vezina. They seem to maybe have something in common. It's just kind of a pattern. All right, before we get out of here, I want to tell you about our friends at Coors Light. Listen, this team, they're driving us nuts. They're driving us nuts in a good way right now, though, because it seems like the Mad Russian is coming, but we might need to back off a little. We might need to just temper our expectations, calm down. Some would say we might need to chill. Well, there's no better way to chill than with an ice cold Coors Light. So whether you're freaking out about, the top prospect coming over from Russia, the salary cap, the playoffs, whatever it is, you need to find the Blue Mountains in your fridge and enjoy a beer as cold as the Rockies, because when everything surrounding your favorite hockey team is on fire, and when isn't it? Sometimes you just gotta chill. When you choose to rise above it all, choose chill, choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/PHLY hockey. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. All right, that is all the time we have for you today on PHLY Flyers. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for hanging out. And thank you to our sponsor, Mortgage CS. Check out mortgagecs.com/PHLY to start your home buying process today. We'll be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And I'm making no promises, but it might be time to start getting into the draft a little bit. Until then, make sure you're subscribed, YouTube, the whole deal. You know it all. My name is Bill Matz. That's Charlie O'Connor. Stay loose and sexy, Philly.
We all silly like the mayor.